Hey guys, welcome to another video from the More Than Just Property podcast. Now, many of you that have followed me for a little while will remember I started this back in May 2022. So we're sort of around celebrating 3 years next week since this podcast came out. But equally, it's been a bit distant. The last 11 months, I think, was the last episode. And it's just, you know, things go by the wayside, not intentionally, but when you're so busy with a vision, with a goal, with a journey to get to 100 million, it kind of parks some of the ideas on the side that you started. And there's no real reason for me to have parked it. And I don't want to park it permanently. I need to bring it back. And I really want to get some good key people back on this podcast and move it forwards again and really get some interviews that will help inspire people. From the last episode, I've been on quite a journey myself with my own mental health journey, but I started in a place where I actually was in a good place, if that makes sense. So I didn't go and seek help for my mental health because I was struggling as such. There was a lot going on, but when there's a lot going on and you have businesses and you have day-to-day responsibilities, you grow as a person. So you push yourself into dealing with stressful situations that grow your brain, grow your emotional range and your emotional capacity to be able to deal with those situations, that when that situation comes up again, or when something else occurs that has a similar kind of vibe or a similar kind of feeling, you're able to deal with it. So it's very much that sort of fear or anxiety or those level of emotions that as you grow, as you mentally expand your capability, you can really deal with things that get thrown in your path along the way so much better than you were able to before. And that really was one of the focuses of my personal journey last year. Many of you will know that I do also break down, you know, a lot of my journey into my personal journey, my business journey, my journey with investors, because they're all very key points to me. And just continuing down the personal journey theme, I also signed up for an Ironman, which is now less than a week away. And I think you don't necessarily realise the ultra level of commitment that does take. The early mornings on, you know, I have a watt bike, so I'm not even out on the road because the roads in the UK are vile, and you're likely going to get knocked off unless you go out super early and it's quiet. But then at this time of year, it's been too cold as well, and I don't like cycling in the cold. So I'm just not going to do it. So, you know, alongside an extreme fitness journey, I've had a mental health crusade to get myself in a really good place. And those two things together have really, really come together this year. Since January, I've been super focused on getting where I need to be. I've let my hair down a few times to just go, you're doing really well, you need a little bit of a treat, go and eat what you want, go and have a couple of drinks, go and see your friends and have a night off and just go to bed late for once and really, really let that focus kind of disappear for a few hours so you can really just, you know, wake up the next morning and go, yes, I've done what I needed to do, I've let my hair down a little bit, let's go again. So the personal focus has been a super crusade for quite a long time, and I've been working with a really good mindset coach called Sophie, who's fairly local to me, but she sees people all over the world. We've worked very heavily mostly on improvement. As I said, I don't feel like I was in a very bad place. There was historic baggage that needed to be got rid of for sure, and that's a little bit like therapy. So going through that with somebody and discussing how it's made you feel, why they believe it's still affecting or limiting you from really ultimately reaching your main potential. And I think that's a really key element for me. Was like it was just more, are there things in the past that I have experienced that sit there like a stone, like a weight, dragging me backwards when all I'm trying to do is push forwards, followed by a lot of improvement, a lot of how do we make this better? How do I sleep better so I recover better, so that I function better, so that I perform better, so that I can make decisions quicker, so we can improve the business, so we can grow the business, so we can really, really, really push that business, any of the businesses, through the roof. And that's where my main focus has been for me. And that was one of the things why the content has dropped by the sidelines. And it's not, as I say, it wasn't intentional. It was just more, I needed to get myself back into a place where everything's firing on a million cylinders, and we're finally there. Now, I also think with content like this, and I don't know how many of you actually watch this and will watch the whole video all the way through, so this will be a really interesting test for me, is ultimately, you know, how many of you watch this end to end? How many of you actually pay attention to the content? How many of you actually listen to what I say and are willing to work with it if it's something you want to do as well? So, I don't know, sometimes I procrastinate about making the content because I'm having a bad day and that will come across in the video and that won't look good to somebody else. Or the end of last year, I'd ballooned up to 92, 93 kilos just by a different style of training and overeating. And then from the beginning of this year, I've had to rein that back in for my Ironman. So I've dropped my weight back down, so I feel more comfortable sitting here talking about it. Not that I felt uncomfortable when I was at 92, 93 kilos, but it made me think about what people are looking at me. Are they looking at me thinking I am not as disciplined as I have been because I've put a bit of weight on? And now I've lost it again. I feel like, oh, everybody's just going to look and go, yeah, you're looking really good. And it kind of plays that mental balance, but it really shouldn't. And I don't think it helps me when I don't feel like I want to produce the video content, if that makes sense. So this video content, this podcast was all about helping people and me learning along the way as well, and making sure that you get everything out of it that you want at the same time. So I'm really keen to get some feedback on what you want this podcast to deliver going forward. I am more than happy to talk about my property content. You know, whilst I've been heads down and not here at the podcast talking to you guys, we've grown that property portfolio to nearly 20 million. I say we, there's a couple of JVs in there. I always get told off for using the word we. It's like that royal we. There is me, and there are a couple of companies on the side where I have done joint ventures with somebody else completely separately to my main bulk that, you know, add half of what's in that company to me. But I have built this £20 million portfolio. It's been an epic journey. It's been amazing. You know, they're all solid UK property assets. The rent rolls over 70 grand a month. We're hitting target after target after target. I'm like, we've got offers in on so many properties at the moment because the market has shifted, but we have to wait because people are holding out longer at the moment to try and get a higher offer. And actually the market's just shifted. So things aren't shifting as quickly as I would like towards my goals, towards everything, but that's just one element of everything I'm doing. And that's where I want to reignite this podcast. I want to reignite everybody's faith in me, that I am out here on a daily basis working really hard to, you know, to produce what you guys want to see, what you guys want to get to the bottom of. You know, it's an education for all of us. And there are things in the property world that I've done that you might want to know, that you want me to go back over and recap. You know, I've done buy-to-lets, I've done HMOs, I've done a new build development site. It's nearly finished, they're going up for sale. We can sort of take that experience and use it for what you want. I've done refurbishments, I've flipped properties, I've done service accommodation now. The only thing I haven't really done much of is the commercial space, and that's purely because I'm hanging on to my SaaS to make sure it's got enough money in it to go and buy my first commercial development, because it's more tax efficient to do it through my SaaS pension than it is to do it in a limited company or to sit on it somewhere else. So it's not that I haven't done it because the right deal hasn't come up. There have been several deals that I've looked at that I thought they'd be really good and they'd be the right one. But equally, timing and taxation and things, you know, all kind of come together at the moment. One of the things I was thinking about was really going back to the beginning of the journey and starting to think about if somebody new came up to me today and said, I want to start in UK property, what's your best piece of advice? My answer would be don't do it. And I know a lot of people will look at me when I say that. And they'll be like, but you've done it. Yeah, I have. It's been a 20-year journey. Yeah, it's actually 21 years since I bought my first property that I still own in the UK. And that journey has been fraught along the way at times. There are down times, there are heavy periods that, you've got to think. I know a lot of you will go back further than me if you're listening or watching this and will remember high interest rates at 15-16%. I don't, but interest rates were 6% when I bought my first mortgage, and then they went down. So where interest rates are at the moment, I still think is historically low-ish for what I was used to from my first couple of mortgages, because interest rates were higher than they are now, and mortgage interest rates definitely. Then post financial crash, obviously the world needed to settle back down and interest rates went lower and lower and lower. And they're about to head back in the same direction. So for those of you looking for a mortgage, there is a bit of good news on the horizon that, Bank of England are expected to cut probably a whole % by the end of this year, if not the beginning of next year, off interest rates. So it's just dropping in a useless fact that I was reading this week. Maybe not so useless, but it's a good starting point. But back to the topic of somebody starting out new. The reason being, and my reasons for telling you not to get into it yourself, is I don't think many people are actually prepared and actually understand the effort, the commitment, the dedication to running a rental property that it takes, whether you use a letting agency, whether you do it yourself. Remember, the letting agency is not a legal barrier if something goes wrong. You as the landlord are responsible for everything. And again, from this month, the government have changed the rules. So not only now when you rent a property to somebody, do you actually have to check that they have the right to rent in this country, it's called, which basically makes you part of the UK border force, because if the person didn't have a right to rent, they probably shouldn't be in the country anyway. So you're now acting as UK border force to, highlight, and you actually have a duty to report it if somebody fails their identity checks and their right to rent checks. You're checking that people can earn enough money to pay the rent on your property, and that's sensible because, it's your asset and you want to make sure that they're going to pay the rent and it's going to be looked after. But you also now have to confirm fully where that money is coming from and comply with extra anti-money laundering checks from the 14th of May. Now, they have been around for a while and landlords have been exempt from doing them, but going forwards, you're not. And that actually means that you can't just rent your property again to anyone. You have to be aware of things like the UK sanctions list, and I'm aware of this from my corporate experience, from work I've done other places. But Russia and Russian people are on that sanctioned list because of the war in the Ukraine. Now that technically means that they won't be able to rent a property, because from the 14th of May, when you go to do your checks, it will flag back that person is technically sanctioned and they won't be able to rent the property. And that seems harsh, but you also are being given duty again to report it. And it's really making landlords at the bottom of the pile have to function as government departments because the government aren't doing their job well enough. And that's slightly frustrating because it adds these whole layers of red tape to being a landlord that takes time, which costs you money. So again, if you were new coming to me and I said don't do it, 100%. If you want one rental property, don't. You will regret it in 3 to 5 years. If you want 3 to 5, don't do it. You will still regret it in 3 to 5 years. If you want to push and go for 10 plus, start competing with the big boys, start competing with the likes of Legal & General, Lloyds Bank, all the big banks who have bought into the private rental sector in this country. Do it. Get on board, but commit to building a minimum of a 10-unit portfolio. Because realistically, that is where you're going to need to be to make it worthwhile your time, your effort, your energy, having to do all these extra checks, having to do all the work that you have to do just to meet the regulation that now surrounds being a landlord. So I didn't want this first video and podcast back to be slightly negative. I started at the beginning about how I've been on my mindset, my personal journey, and I'm just reiterating a few points I've made over time. So this is the first of many. We're going to bring these back, and I'm going to go into a lot more detail around the journey I've been on mentally and how I think it can help you, and how having your mind in the right space is key to absolutely everything. Through, if you want to build a property portfolio, I work with mentees all the time. I'm happy to help people, to work with people, but I have some questions for you that you would have to answer. And if you're hesitant about joining in, about getting on board with building something epic, don't sign up with me, because I am going to push you from the beginning of your journey. I am going to make sure that you get where you want to go. And you're not going to like me, because I will be WhatsApping you at 6 o'clock in the morning to ask what you're doing that day in regards to your journey. Whether you have a full-time job and keep it, whether you run another business and you want to do this as a sideline, you want to go and build something big, you need to be held accountable. So work with somebody that's going to do that, somebody that's going to be your accountability partner, and really get to the bottom of understanding what's going to drive you by having somebody push you. It's one of the biggest things that helped me all the way through this, all the time. I'm going to talk about the property portfolio that we've built, and I'm also going to start exploring and talking about the 1, 2, 3, 4 other areas of business we're looking at this year. I am looking at this year. There are some joint ventures in there, but I'm looking at, and I've always said this to everybody, you need a cash flowing element to your life. So if that is your 9 to 5 job, do not give up your 9 to 5 job, because you need something to pay the bills. When it goes to shit, you need something to pay your own mortgage, to pay your bills whilst you deal with the shit. So if that is your 9 to 5 job, if that is a self-employed job that you work whatever hours you want, you can work remotely, you can get a nomad visa, you can go abroad, do it, but just keep money coming in, right? Do not go all in on property and expect it to look after you, because it won't, not fully. So where I've gone from having a great cash flowing business, which is still great and is still cash flowing, buying lots of assets which are cash flowing and are really good, what I want to go back to is bolting on some more cash flowing businesses. Now, one example is a company called Hamilton Grace that I purchased last year. And I'm going to do an episode on the purchase of that. You know, I bought an existing business, it's already established, it's already got a brand, it's already making money from day one. And the structure of the purchase around that, and how that really enabled me, you know, to add extra cash flow into my group of companies through that deal. And I think that's a really good exploratory conversation to have with people as well. It's something else I want to look at, is the addition of, you know, other businesses. And yes, people will laugh and go, but you've got all this other stuff. Yeah, my tech company's great, but it's a lot of time. If I could reduce that time and make the same amount of money, I would. But if I can't reduce the time to make that level of money, I have to have other things that make the money. Now, I would rather have 10 businesses that I could take 10 grand a month out of than one that I can only take 20 to 25 grand a month out of. Who wouldn't? And if you can get 10 businesses that generate you 10 grand a month, that's £100,000 a month. That's over £1 million a year that you can take out, that you can use on a monthly basis. Who wouldn't want that? You're never going to spend it all. I mean, people say they will, and you will at the beginning, but most people, you just wouldn't, you know. So yeah, so we'll do an episode around that as well. Start recording and re-recording the episodes, the instructions. You know, think about your fitness, think about your health. It's the only thing that's keeping you going. The fitter you are, the better you can perform in business. All that sort of stuff. And we'll get that down in some videos, and we'll get the content out to you as quickly as possible. There's going to be some new different reels on my personal Instagram as well. Don't forget I have 2. So you can go and follow Alan Harding Official, and that really is, it's about a story and a journey, mostly in the property space. And this bit here is more my fitness, my personal space, me, the other businesses I'm getting involved in, the people I want to get involved in business as well. So a lot of that probably doesn't make any sense to any of you. And I don't know that you'll go and listen or comment or send me any feedback. Excuse me, I've had a really bad cough for a couple of days, and I got most of the way through that video without coughing, so I'm really proud of myself. But yes, If you want more information, if you want information about investing, being a mentee and building your own portfolio, coming to train with me and just work out with me and see how hard and how intense we train on a weekly, daily, monthly basis, any of that, give me a shout. I'm always open to a conversation to see how I can give something back to you. Obviously, if you want, a longer mentee program, there's a cost because it is my time dedicated to you. Otherwise, go and enjoy the rest of this glorious weekend here in the UK. This video will be out soon. I will drop it on YouTube. I will get the audio out onto the podcast, and hopefully we can resurrect more than just property. And yeah, here we go again.